So, distributed protest. What is it? Why do you use it? And how do you do it? Well, here's an example of a mass protest. This is the traditional sort of thing that happens. This is Tahrir Square in Egypt. And obviously you've got huge numbers of people gathered, which makes it a very easy target for the police. Now in Egypt the police aren't all that well organised. They're not really used to dealing with protests, although they might be by now. They certainly weren't at the time this picture was taken. And so they don't have the techniques for controlling it. So this in Egypt worked fine. And it used to work throughout the West. It used to work in London and New York and places like that, but no longer. We all know what happens now. And here you have the police indulging in kettling in central London, where they take a part of a crowd like that, they split it off from the rest, they ram it into a street, they shove everyone up so they can't move, and you can't even see any banners, you can't hear the protest over the noises, there's no media attention because they're shoved down a side street. No one can see them. They're brushed out of the way. There might be 4,000 or 5,000 people in this picture who are all protesting like mad. Their net impact is 0. Now, in America they started a new method of protest because of this, and this is overpass protests. So here we are. You can see they've got the signs out, they've got the flags out. On many of these protests people have got bullhorns, but they're still limited to one place. They're protesting, it's distributed, but they've only got one philosophy of doing it, and there's no real organisation behind it. And that in turn makes it very easy for the police to combat. They just turn up to the overpasses, move people on, strip the flags and the banners, throw them away, and no protest. So they might be there for an hour and that's it. Now of course, if you split up into groups to protest, you have to make sure you have enough people. This protest is obviously not going to have much impact. Yes, they've got good banners and all the rest of it. They're standing outside their local railway station, but there's only 5 of them, and it looks like the railway station's got nobody there. Who are they protesting to? Now, obviously, the police tend to take action against protesters who are violent, or who they feel that they cannot control. And the whole purpose of distributed protest is to defuse this, but also to use up the resources of the police as much as possible. So let's have a look at how to organise a distributed protest. First of all, what you need to do is list all the places in the target town or city where people congregate, and things like natural gathering areas that people might stop and chat, squares, shopping areas, all the rest of it. Traffic junctions, big traffic junctions, especially those with pedestrian crossings or overpasses. Transport hubs, major rail and bus stations, airports, tourist attractions. And then the next thing to do is to put the time or times, because some of them may be crowded more than one time in the day. Some of them might be just lunchtime, some of them might be rush hours, some of them might be just evening. So you then come up with a sequenced target list of places and times to protest. You need to estimate how many protesters will attend and multiply this figure by 0.7, that is to say derate the number of protesters by 30% just for safety's sake, and decide how big your individual protest groups will be, and this will give you how many protest groups you have. Now a minimum of 20 I would suggest is needed, but I wouldn't go much over 100, and I definitely wouldn't be tempted to hit the better targets, which will have a higher police presence with larger numbers. Remember, your aim is to expose your protest to as many people during the course of the day as you can. You then need to allocate a leader and a deputy leader for each group, preferably two people who know each other. You split the targets by geography and time so that at any one time protest is widely spread across the area and takes many different forms. Now, this obviously means that the police have got a problem. If you're all in the town square and there's 500 people in the town square, that's one thing. That's actually quite easily to deal with. They bust in a load of police, they split you all up, they kettle you, they march you to the station, they do all the usual sort of things that they can do. They can even fire tear gas at you if things get ugly, and send in the dogs and the horses. However, if you've got groups of 20 to 100 people in 8 or 9 locations around the city, this is now very much more difficult, because the police cannot concentrate their forces, and they spend a lot of time travelling from one place to another, as it becomes obvious where the protest is. So you give both the leader and the deputy their own list of targets and times, but don't give them a complete list for every group, because if the police decide to arrest one of them, obviously the first thing they're going to do, turn out your pockets, there's a list, and they'll only get the list for one group. Tell the group leader in each case to contact those geographically close to them and arrange their own marshalling point near their first demonstration. This stops it becoming known that, oh, everyone's going to meet in the car park behind Sainsbury's on Pope Street, and obviously they all turn up there, the police are already there, kettling, disbursement, all the rest of it. If you marshal in lots of separate places, there's nothing really the police can do about it. And rules for distributed protest. First of all, make sure everybody knows when and where the next target is before you start protesting at the target that you're at. And make sure they know that they're to get there under their own steam when the command and signal to melt is given. Make sure they know what this signal is, whether it's you shouting melt, or it's you raising your right arm and pointing to the sky, or whirling it like a dervish round your head, whatever signal you come up with. Then you protest as appropriate for the target, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If the authorities turn up, then keep them talking. Basically, you're trying to tie up their resources for as long as possible at your protest, so that they don't have the time to go and visit all the other protests that are going on. Now, if the conversation starts to get a bit heated, or the authorities look threatening, they're turning up in big vans with lots of riot police, dogs and all the rest of it, or they're adamant that you should move on and they're about to arrest someone, then give the melt signal. It's no problem. Loads and loads of people have seen your protest here at this site, move on to the next one. So people will in their own time pack their banners up and whatever else they've got, hide the t-shirts and proceed to the next target, ready to protest there at the time given. But try not to arrive at the next target before time, because that will give away where it is. And you repeat this for each target that you do, obviously. Now, distributed protest methods. Natural gathering areas, you can use the traditional methods, shouting, chanting, placards, bullhorn, and if there's a pedestrian crossing you can also use traffic disruption, which I'll talk about in a sec. Now, at traffic junctions, as well as letting your protest be known, you have a chance to disrupt the traffic. Now, in a major city there's lots and lots of pedestrian crossings, and if at say 50 or 60 places around the city centre people are slowing down the traffic by 30 or 40 seconds, this can create huge queues, it can create gridlock. Okay, and people will then have definitely an idea that there's somebody protesting, which is important. So form a queue at any traffic crossings and cross very slowly. Not so slowly that you're going to get moved on, but say as slowly as a little old man with a walking stick would cross. Maybe take 15-20 seconds to cross the crossing each person, and you have a queue of maybe 10 or 15 people at each crossing, because don't forget some traffic junctions will have 3 or 4 crossings at. Then you regroup and you do your traditional protest methods, chants, all the rest of it. Give the traffic maybe 20 or 30 seconds to flow on to the next protest and repeat. And have members allocated to drivers who are stationary, and maybe they can hand out a leaflet or just simply talk about the protest. If there's an overpass, then obviously you can do the same techniques as in the US: banner display, megaphone use, waving, honk if you support our cause, all the rest of it. At transport hubs and tourist attractions, the important thing is not to go inside. If you go inside, then you've got all the problems with trespass, you've got all the problems with behaviour in a public place, all the rest of it. So the best thing to do is to blockade the entrances using traffic disruption methods, plus also your traditional protest methods. Just make sure everyone who's going to that tourist attraction or transport hub or is walking away from it knows that there's a protest going on. This is the important thing, because all of the police disruption methods around protesting are aimed at stopping people even knowing that there's a protest going on. So when you move from protest site to protest site, use whatever transport you like. You can walk, you can cycle, you can bus, you can use the metro, whatever, but don't try not to travel in groups of more than 4, and make sure you're not easily identified as a protester. That means if you've got a t-shirt saying ban the bomb or whatever, you cover it up. If you've got a banner, you try and hide it. If you've got a placard, you take it off the pole, you put it in your bag, you can carry the pole if you want, whatever. Just make sure that people don't look at you and immediately say, oh look, there's a protester, because the police will be looking at CCTV and trying to identify where the next protest is going to happen. So if you're all in separate groups, you're all going to different places, and then suddenly within a couple of minutes of the protest you're all at the site of the protest, you've got your banners out, you've got your placards out, you've got your t-shirts visible and all the other good things, then the chances of the police being psychic and predicting where you're going to be is very minimal, and they're going to be reliant on somebody reporting it, and then they have all the problems of getting through the disrupted traffic to get to you. There's a lot of benefits to traffic disruption. Finally, at the end of the day, you may all want to meet up at a central location at the end of the day, outside a TV station, newspaper office or some other media-rich destination, and this is where photo opportunities can occur, interviews with the person who's leading the protest and all the rest of it. And there is very little chance by that time that the police will arrive in any time to do anything about it, because they're going to be scattered all over the place. They're all going to be tired, they're going to have been driving around, walking around, you name it. They're going to have had a very active day, because at least you have known what it is you're going to be able to do and where you're going to be at different times. The police have had no idea of this, so they've covered an awful lot more ground than you have. Anyway, I hope this is useful to those of you who are planning protests, and hopefully it will avoid situations where you're being tear-gassed and mass arrests and kettled up into a little street and crushed to death. If you like this, please share it with anyone you think may be interested. Thank you very much. Bye.